Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling a really significant chapter in global history, European imperialism in Africa.
That's right, a period with huge consequences.
Because the scramble for Africa, as it's often called, wasn't just about, grabbing land and drawing lines on maps.
Not at all. It fundamentally reshaped how the major European countries saw each other, interacted with each other.
And it kind of laid the groundwork for future conflicts, didn't it?
Absolutely. It created this intense atmosphere of rivalry and suspicion.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Your resources mentioned several key things we need to look at.
Things like the Berlin Conference, the Boer War.
Right, and figures like Cecil Rhodes, his whole Cape to Cairo railway idea.
And those really tense moments, the Fashoda crisis, the Moroccan crises.
Exactly. Our aim today is to dig into these events and really understand how they, stoked the flames of European tension.
Sounds good. Where should we start?
Well, the Berlin Conference seems like the logical place, 1884 to 85.
It does. And the resources you shared mention its stated goal was to formalize rules for claiming African territories.
And also to prevent conflict among themselves. The European powers, that is.
Yeah, which on the surface sounds pretty sensible, doesn't it? Trying to bring some order to the process.
You'd think so, like setting ground rules before a race. But did it work? Did it prevent conflict?
Well, that's the fascinating part. While it did establish rules, your materials correctly point out that it also effectively ignited a scramble for Africa.
How so? How did rules speed things up?
Because by setting rules for how to claim land, like needing to show effective occupation, it created this sense of urgency.
Okay. Like if you don't get there fast and plant your flag and build a fort or whatever, someone else will beat you to it under the new rules.
Precisely. Each nation raced to claim as much land as possible, fearing they'd lose out to rivals. It turned into a frantic dash.
So instead of calming things down,
Yeah.
it just made everyone sprint faster in their designated lanes, metaphorically speaking.
Exactly. And the prize wasn't just any land. Everyone wanted the most valuable territories.
Right. The ones rich in resources or strategically important.
And Africa, as your notes remind us, was incredibly rich, especially in minerals, gold, diamonds, copper, things European industries craved.
So the economic motive was huge. They knew there was wealth to be extracted.
Absolutely. That knowledge just intensified the competition, making nations vie even harder for those resource-rich areas.
Okay, so Berlin sets the stage, cranks up the urgency. What's the first big clash that shows this tension really heating up?
The Boer War is a really key example here, fought between 1899 and 1902.
In South Africa, right?
Right.
Between the British and the Boers, the Dutch settlers.
That's the one. And as your resources state, it was partly driven by competition for control over the region's rich resources.
Gold and diamonds again.
Gold and diamonds, yes. Huge discoveries had been made, making the region incredibly valuable.
And the British eventually won that war. How did that go down with the other European powers? Like Germany or France?
Well, the British victory certainly expanded British power, which was their goal, but it also caused resentment from other European powers.
Why resentment? Just sour grapes.
More than that, they saw Britain as being really aggressive, throwing its weight around to expand its empire.
And maybe grabbing resources they might have wanted a piece of?
Exactly. It felt like Britain was getting too powerful, potentially at their expense. It definitely didn't help relations between them.
Makes sense. One player hoarding the best cards. Now, talking about British ambition, we have to mention Cecil Rhodes.
Oh, absolutely. A hugely influential figure. Your materials call him an influential British imperialist and businessman.
And a staunch advocate for British expansion in Africa. He sounds like he was all in.
He really was, and he had this grand, almost audacious vision.
The Cape to Cairo Railway.
Yes. A British-controlled Cape to Cairo railway stretching from South Africa to Egypt. An unbroken line of British territory right through the continent.
Wow. That's ambitious. Did other countries just shrug and say, good luck?
Not a chance. His efforts, as your notes say, were opposed by other European nations who had their own colonial ambitions.
Like who?
Germany, for instance, had ambitions in East Africa that clashed with his route. France had designs on connecting its West and East African territories.
So his plan literally cut across their plans.
Precisely. And this contributed to friction as each power vied for dominance along this route. Everyone wanted their own zone of control, their own connections. Rhodes' railway dream is a direct challenge.
It's like competing infrastructure projects on a continental scale, leading to friction.
A good way to put it. And that friction could get incredibly dangerous. Which brings us to the Fashoda crisis.
1898. This one sounds serious. Britain and France nearly going to war.
Very nearly. It happened in a small town called Fashoda in Sudan. As your materials describe, British and French forces nearly came to war there.
Over what? Was Fashoda itself that important?
Not the town itself so much. The issue was both sought control over the region strategically located along the Nile.
Ah, the Nile.
Right.
Crucial waterway. Control the upper Nile. You potentially have leverage over Egypt downriver.
Exactly. It was strategically vital. The British were pushing south from Egypt, the French east from their territories in Central Africa. They met at Fashoda.
And they stared each other down.
Pretty much. It was incredibly tense. War was eventually avoided through diplomacy. The French backed down.
But the impact.
Even without a war, the standoff underscored the intense competition for territory and influence, and significantly left a legacy of deep mistrust between Britain and France.
So these near misses just kept adding to the suspicion and anxiety between the powers.
Yes, it showed just how easily a colonial dispute could escalate into a major European crisis.
Which is, it seems like a perfect lead-in to the Moroccan crises. More close calls.
Indeed. Two major ones, in 1905 and 1911. Your resources explain these were times when France and Germany clashed over control of Morocco.
What was Germany's issue? France had been establishing influence there, hadn't they?
It had, but Germany decided to challenge that, to assert its own interests and maybe test the strength of the Anglo-French understanding, the Entente Cordiale.
And they challenged it.
In 1905, the German Kaiser Wilhelm II actually visited Tangier in Morocco and declared support for Moroccan independence, a direct provocation to France.
That sounds deliberately inflammatory.
It was. And in both crises, diplomatic tensions almost escalated into war. Again, major powers on the brink over a colonial issue.
What was the outcome? Did Germany get what it wanted?
Not really. In both cases, international conferences were held, and France's position in Morocco was largely upheld, often with British diplomatic support.
So it backfired on Germany.
In a way, it certainly strained relations between Germany, France, and Britain even further. Britain tended to side with France against what they saw as German aggression.
So these crises actually pushed Britain and France closer together against Germany.
That's a key outcome. They demonstrated how competition over colonies could bring major European powers to the brink of conflict. And they definitely helped solidify the alliance systems France and Britain aligned, Germany feeling increasingly encircled.
Which, as your Goal 5 summary hints, points towards the buildup to World War I.
Exactly. These colonial rivalries were feeding directly into the larger European tensions.
It's wild how events in Africa were reshaping politics back in Europe.
Absolutely. And we should probably quickly touch on the why, again, the underlying drivers from Goal 1 of your unit.
Right, it wasn't just random map drawing. There were deep reasons.
Two big ones stand out in your materials. First, the desire for raw materials and new markets.
The Industrial Revolution effect. Factories needed resources, and colonies seemed like the place to get them, and also places to sell finished goods.
Precisely. An economic engine driving the need for empire.
And the second driver?
Nationalism. Pure and simple. In that era, having a big empire was a massive status symbol.
A sign of national strength and superiority.
Yes. Colonies were seen as proof your nation was powerful, prestigious, so there was intense competition for that prestige. Losing out in the colonial race was seen as a national humiliation.
Like an international league table of empires. And nobody wanted to be near the bottom.
You got it. This fierce nationalism meant any clash over colonial territory became a matter of national honor, making compromise much harder.
Okay, so pulling all this together, Berlin, Boer War, Rhodes, Fashoda, Morocco, fueled by economics and nationalism, it paints a pretty clear picture.
It does. The central point, as the summary section notes, is that the European race to claim African colonies led to an atmosphere of suspicion, competition, and hostility among powers.
Even though the Berlin Conference tried to manage it.
The underlying drives were just too strong. The competition inevitably led to friction.
The Boer War showed it could lead to actual shooting wars over resources.
Rhodes' grand schemes showed the clash of ambitions on the ground.
Fashoda showed how close they could come to major war over strategic spots.
And the Moroccan crises showed this pattern continuing right up into the early 20th century, solidifying those rival alliances.
So these tensions over Africa weren't just a sideshow. They were a really significant factor in that whole complex web of rivalries leading towards 1914.
A very significant factor. It's
Right.
really interesting, isn't it, how these events far away in Africa had such huge repercussions back in Europe.
So what does it all mean in the end?
It means the scramble for Africa was much more than acquiring territory. It was, like you said earlier, a high-stakes game.
A game that fundamentally changed the relationships between the European powers.
Exactly. It created deep distrust, heightened rivalries, and ultimately contributed to the climate that made the First World War possible.
Really crucial history to understand. Okay, to help everyone process this, let's run through those self-assessment questions based on the material.
Good idea.
First, what were the main goals of the Berlin Conference, and why did it not fully prevent increased tensions among European powers?
Next, how did the discovery of valuable resources in South Africa, like gold and diamonds, contribute specifically to European rivalries in that region?
Then, in what ways did the personal ambitions of someone like Cecil Rhodes reflect and actually intensify the wider competition for African colonies?
Why was the Fashoda crisis such a significant example of the heightened tensions, even though war was avoided?
Also, how did the Moroccan crises demonstrate the potential for these colonial disputes to really destabilize relationships between the major European nations?
And finally, can you connect the competition for African colonies back to those broader motivations for imperialism we discussed? Raw materials, markets, and nationalism.
Some important things to reflect on there. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Absolutely. It's a complex but vital part of history.
And here's a final thought. Consider how the lines drawn on the map of Africa during this period, often with little regard for existing cultures or geography, and the relationships forged in this intense competition, still echo today. They continue to shape politics and economics across both continents. It's a past that is very much still present.